we're going to be ranking the top 10 quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL Draft. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with at number 10, I have John Mateer. Now, by the way, on my podcast, First and 10, link in the description below as well as in the comments, I already did a full top 10 rankings where we talked about these players in more detail. You can also hear my co-host's own list, so check it out if you want to. But as I mentioned, at number 10, I have John Mateer. John Mateer is a very fun player to watch, one of the more fun players to watch in this year's cycle. He has a lot of good parts to his game. His release is very quick. It's snappy. He can get the ball out really in a lot of different angles. I do think, though, because of his snappiness and because of certain angles he does do, at times he can kind of get away with some inaccurate throws. And honestly, sometimes he needs to learn to just kind of lay off the arm sometimes, because there will be moments where a guy will be 5 yards down the field and he's throwing the ball like 100 miles per hour when he doesn't really have to do so. For every single player in this list, I gave them 3 main pros and 3 main cons. For John Mateer's 3 main pros, I said he's a really solid athlete. I think he plays with great timing and precision, and he's a college gamer, so he's willing to kind of do whatever it takes to win games. Sometimes, however, those willing to do whatever it takes can honestly kind of backfire on occasion as well. Now, for his cons, he's not a prototypical size, a little bit undersized, had a lot of turnover-worthy plays, but also had a lot of big-time plays as well. And I just worry about his NFL upside because he has such a college-like play style. Now, again, he is somebody that I don't think is ever going to move into like first-round considerations. I do think he's more than likely going to stick to probably being a day 3 to maybe day 2 pick. But he's an incredibly fun player that if he can just have a really nice season for Oklahoma, I'm sure there'll be a lot of teams that want to give him a chance because of his personality, because of his culture fit, because of the way he acts and performs. His lack of size is a little bit disappointing, and he reminds me in some ways of, ironically enough, a guy like a Kyler and a Baker Mayfield in a lot of different ways too. But I don't think he's quite as accurate or doesn't really have the upside of a Kyler nor a Baker. So with that said, if I had to give him like a pro comparison, I would say like a Temu or a low-end Baker Mayfield, but that's a fine player because Baker Mayfield's been in the league for quite some time. Yes, there's been ups and downs, but more recently, a lot more ups than downs. All in all, John Mateer is a really fun player to watch. If you haven't checked out his game, I highly suggest you do. Just watch the highlights. He's a really fun player, but if you want to get in the nitty-gritty, just watch some film. Really fun player to scout. Moving over to number 9, I have Nico Iamaleava. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Nico is a very interesting case. Now, we have to talk about what happened this offseason when we have the Nico conversation, because I do think it does in some way play into his ranking. I know the story has been kind of beaten over and over again, and we all kind of know what happened, but briefly, in case you're unaware or just aren't really up to date with everything that happened, he commits to Tennessee. He gets a massive NIL deal from Tennessee. He's at Tennessee for 2 years, sits for 1 year, plays last year, plays pretty well, all things considered, and looked like the best was yet to come for Nico. And then he asks for a pay increase. Tennessee stands their ground. They say, no, we agreed on this deal, so we're going to stick with this deal. He ends up leaving, going to UCLA, where he actually took less money, ironically enough. Now, one of the things that Nico and his camp are saying is that UCLA is a better scheme fit, and it allows him to learn to become a bit more of an NFL quarterback, which in some ways I do think is kind of true. Tennessee and their playstyle is a very college playstyle. There's a lot of space. The receivers are so wide out, and you just don't see that in the NFL. However, with UCLA, maybe they could run a bit more of an NFL scheme that could better prepare him for what he's going to see at the NFL level if he makes it there. Nico is a very high upside guy, former 5-star recruit, commits to Tennessee, and last year for Tennessee, you saw a lot of the good moments, but also a lot of bad moments too. For his goods, I said he's extremely well sized. I think his talent is through the roof, especially with his arm. And the last thing is I think he has pretty quick feet. He's also a pretty mobile quarterback for his size. I do think his accuracy is a little bit inconsistent. I thought in big moments in certain games, he didn't play up to expectations, and that was kind of the biggest issues I really had with his game. Again, he's a well-sized guy with an absolute cannon of an arm. He can make any throw out there on the football field. He can be really well-timed, and I thought at times with Tennessee, when they were going up against lesser competition, you really saw him kind of take advantage of it. But my issue was when he was going up against higher level competition, which of course, doesn't even stack up to the NFL, but close to enough, he really struggled in a lot of games where he wasn't going through progression super well. There would be guys wide open and he would just simply miss him. The reason why I have him up at number 9 is just because the talent is there. And if UCLA can really hone in his craft this upcoming season, we can see him take a massive step forward in the right direction. And if he does take that step forward, then we're talking about a guy that could end up legitimately, just based off upside and talent, being positioned to be a day 2 or a day 1 pick. But if he doesn't take a big step forward in the next year, I have a hard time seeing teams really wanting him because of the off the field stuff that just happened, and just the fact that there's a lot of still progress that needs to be obtained over the next couple years. Nico is a younger player, so there is a chance he ends up returning after 2026. So My guess right now is that he's not going to be in the 26 class, but I'm going to scout him out like he is. Next up, let's move over to number 8, Carson Beck. Now, this one for me is a little bit higher than I've seen a lot of other people's lists. And I think the biggest reason why is because I'm still kind of holding on to that 2023 film that we saw from him. So some of the pros to Carson Beck's game is I think he's a very safe quarterback. His size is pretty solid, and I think he gives you a solid arm in general. For Georgia in 2023, he played with pretty solid timing, and when the talent was on the field, aka the 2023 Georgia offense compared to the 24 Georgia offense, it felt like he played a lot better. But in 2024, there was a lot of bad things on film. He really struggles under pressure. His whole rhythm is thrown off when they send a blitz. When the offensive line isn't perfect, he just kind of folds under the pressure. So that is a massive issue. And when you get to the NFL, any sort of flaw to your game, offensive coordinators are going to have a hard time scheming around your issues, whereas defensive coordinators are going to do whatever it takes to exploit your issues. So if you are a quarterback that really struggles when the pocket collapses and when there's any pressure on your face, defenses are just going to send blitz after blitz after blitz after blitz. And if you're a quarterback, you have to be able to adjust. As we all know, Carson Beck is now with the Miami Hurricanes, and I think it will be a better spot for him as there's a lot of pressure for him in Georgia. He still plays in a really talented team in Miami, a lot less pressure, a lot less eyes. So if you can really focus in on that 2023 film and not so much the 2024 film, you will feel a little bit better than Carson Beck at the end of the day. If he would have went out in 2023, if he could have, he would have probably been a top 5 pick. But we all saw what happened in 2024. It was night and day different. And now he's fallen all the way out of some people's top 10. He was really close to not making my top 10, but I'm still kind of holding on to that 2023 film where you just felt like there was something still left in the tank. He has good size. He can play with good anticipation. For the most part, it was pretty accurate. He just has to perform better when the pocket's collapsing and when there's not, when there's pressure in his face. So I think the best hopefully is yet to come with Miami, but we'll just have to wait and see. Number 7, I have Sam Levitt, another one of these guys similar to John Mateer that is just a really fun watch. Now, he's one of the younger players on this list. Like Carson Beck, I believe, is a senior. John Mateer is a senior. He's definitely one of the younger guys, and he kind of plays like it. There are moments where Sam Levitt is just so precise and so in a rhythm and in a mode, and occasionally he'll make a dumb play here and there, but for the most part, Sam Levitt's a really fun player. For his pros, I said he has a really solid arm. His talent is through the roof, very solid athletically, and for the most part, wasn't very turnover prone, was very safe with the football. For his flaws, though, I still think that fundamentally he can be a little bit off at times. There were moments of inconsistency, and I think that there was a level of the Scatabo effect that did happen for Levitt. That Arizona State offense was completely centered around Scatabo. Get Scatabo the ball as many times in as many ways as possible, and of course, it led Arizona State to a playoff berth, so it ended up working out. But for Sam Levitt, there was moments where it felt like maybe he was relying on him, which I guess is not necessarily a bad thing when Scatabo's a damn good player. But now that Scatabo's off the team, there's going to be more pressure for Sam Levitt to be the guy, and I do think he's ready to be the guy. He's solidly built, well-sized, he looks big on paper, looks big on the field. And I think there's everything that you want to see within a quarterback prospect. Now, again, he's not a perfect prospect. There's a lot of development he needs to get through. He's still a very young guy. His fundamentals at times can really just be off, and there's moments of inconsistency that really frustrate you. But when he gets into a rhythm, he's one of the more harder guys to stop in the league. His game against Texas, you can see my Texas flag right here, was a really good matchup where he performed at a very elite level. So I do think that he's a really high-end level player. It's just that we got to give him some time. And with Arizona State, he's going to be the guy this year, so we'll just have to wait and see. Moving over to number 6, Lenoris Sellers. Now, Lenoris has a chance to be the number 1 pick or completely undrafted, depending on how things go. Unfortunately for Lenoris, I do think there's going to be a lot of people more skeptical of him because of what has ultimately happened with Anthony Richardson, where Anthony was somebody who was a little bit raw, didn't really have all the fundamentals down, but was such a supreme athlete and had so much potential that the Indianapolis Colts were willing to spend a top 5 pick on him. It's kind of the same thing for Sellers. If Sellers had came out in last year's draft, I know he couldn't have, but if he could have, he would have probably been a top 5 pick just based off of pure talent and just based off of pure upside. But if there are a lot of teams that may not be willing to take that risk because they're a little bit more concerned of the Anthony Richardson case, maybe Lenoris gets pushed down the board a little bit. Now, Lenoris has the opportunity to do something that AR did not do, which is actually play for 2 full seasons for this team. South Carolina, of course, is going to be starting Lenoris Sellers. He's going to be this quarterback for the team next year, and there's a lot to like of Lenoris Sellers. Number 1, the talent is through the roof. He has everything you want in a quarterback prospect: elite arm, insane athletic, and a size profile that you just can't find anywhere. But he's also somebody that is very raw. So for his cons, he's a very raw player. I think he needs probably 2 to 3 years of genuine development, and he had some turnover problems last year, and there was moments where he wasn't really seeing the field that well. So in some ways, you can push the accelerator because of that raw talent and everything that is there, but in other ways, you might also want to pump the brakes on this guy because he has a lot of time still to grow. But again, as I mentioned earlier, with that upside, with that size, with that arm talent, the athleticism, there are going to be some teams out there that look at Lenoris and say, hey, this guy can be our future Cam Newton. This guy can be our future Josh Allen or one of those level of quarterbacks. And I think he has it. I think that if he can take a nice step forward from his first year of getting legit playing time, now in 2025, taking a bigger step forward, he's going to be a guy that's going to get talked about a lot in the first round of just raw upside, of just straight potential. For myself, I think Lenoir Sellers has a chance to be a first or second round pick, even if he doesn't take like a drastic step forward next year, but like makes small little improvements. I could see a team taking a second round flyer on this guy and saying, hey, we're going to try and develop him and give him 3 to 4 years and he'll be our guy of the future, because he is just that talented and has everything you want. Also appears to be a pretty good kid in general. So I'm rooting for the guy. I think he has a lot of things to prove though, but give him time. He might be able to showcase some things. Moving over to number 5, Cade Klubnik. A lot of people are very high on Cade Klubnik. Me personally, I do really worry about one issue. Now, real quick, let's talk about the positives. 2024 was an impressive season. He really took a nice jump forward from his first couple years starting. I think he's really solid and really accurate. He's athletically pretty solid there too. And I think he has good arm talent just in general. But he lacks size, and I do think he's a bit of a late bloomer where those first few years were not particularly special. And then 2024, he looked a lot better. Now, again, I'm talking as a Texas fan, and Cade Klubnik kind of dotted us up in that second half. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, he's got the goods. I more worry a little bit about the Bryce Young effect, where Cade is size-wise, kind of feels similar to Bryce, where Bryce is just so small compared to other quarterbacks and is physically limited. And I kind of worry about that with Cade Klubnik. Now, what are those limitations that Bryce has? Well, he's super small. It's really difficult to look in the center of the field because your offensive linemen are there. And when you are a barely 6-foot quarterback and you're looking behind 6'6", 6'7" offensive linemen, it's quite difficult to see over the field. So a lot of times what you'll see is Bryce Young standing legitimately on his tippy toes to see over the offensive lineman. Now, he can see on the outside, he can see on the underneath. That's all fine and dandy. But in the middle of the field where there's so much potential and opportunity for big plays, it's harder for smaller quarterbacks to really do so. And that's kind of what you see sometimes from Cade Klubnik, where he's not super tiny and he actually has a little bit of bulkiness to it. Like, he's a well-framed guy. He's just kind of short, and I do worry about his size limiting him in some ways. I did mention that I thought his arm talent was solid. I don't think his arm talent is of the likes of Lenoris or Nico or even Sam Levitt. I think his arm is fine. There was a training, I guess he did with some prospects, and I saw it online. I saw a video, and there was a bunch of high school 5-star, 4-star quarterbacks that had much better and much more live arms than somebody like Cade. Now, Cade was more accurate and played with a better rhythm and timing because he's a college pro, but I felt like his arm wasn't as like strong and powerful as some of these other high school guys. Now, again, I want to reiterate, those are 5- and 4-star guys who are a lot younger, a lot less wear and tear, so maybe that plays into it. But I just kind of felt like Cade, while he can make every throw on the football field and has a good enough arm, it wasn't necessarily the most live arm compared to some of these other quarterbacks, especially as we get up the board. But with Cade comes a guy that has a lot of experience, a lot of playing time. I thought for the most part last year in 2024 was super solid against whatever team went up there, can read the field properly, can go through progressions, and I really like what Cade Klubnik brings. I just kind of worry about that size element a tad. Moving over to number 4, Fernando Mendoza. Now, he is a taller guy, but he's not really like the thickest built guy in the world, and he's somebody that is kind of going under the radar. Now, I've seen him ranked as highly as the #1 quarterback prospect in some people's boards. I've also seen him ranked like inside the top 10, like bordering between 8 and 10. But surprisingly, a lot of people are not really familiar with Fernando Mendoza, and I think that we should give him some level of attention as we enter into the 2026 quarterback draft class. I think a big reason why nobody really knows about Fernando is because he played for University of California, which is just not a big football school. But now he's going over to Indiana, where he's going to be the starting quarterback. And there's a lot of things to like about Fernando's game. Now, I hate that I'm going to say this. Fernando is not somebody that you can just watch highlights on and say like, oh yeah, this is a good quarterback. One thing you kind of have to do with Fernando is actually like sit down and genuinely watch the film, because you really don't get the full Mendoza package until you actually sit down and watch the film, which is, I know it's super like kind of corny to say, but it's just kind of true. Like when you watch the highlights of Fernando, it's not particularly special or anything like that. It kind of makes you think, oh, this is a like, you know, top 15 quarterback, but not like top 5. It isn't until you actually like sit down, watch him go through progressions and actually do the stuff that NFL quarterbacks do that makes you really impressed with the guy. Now for his pros, I say he plays with solid size. His rhythm is really sharp. And for the most part, I thought he was a really smart player. My cons for him is that I do kind of worry a little bit about his upside. Like I just kind of think he reminds me so much of like what Jared Goff was coming out of college, where you kind of knew what you were getting. I also think because he went to Cal, the competition wasn't particularly special. And there was also moments where I wanted him to be a bit more aggressive, and he was a bit more conservative than what I would have liked. Now, compared to all the quarterbacks on this list, I think it's fair to say that Fernando is the safest guy in terms of you kind of know what you're going to get, but he's also the guy that I feel like has the least upside to be like a top 10 quarterback in the league. Like if Fernando goes in the top 10, I know I'm getting a solid like Kirk Cousins level quarterback, assuming he, you know, plays well for Indiana, of course, but I know I'm getting like a solid Kirk Cousins level quarterback. I'm not getting a Mahomes though. Like Lenoris could be Mahomes, he could be Josh Allen. Some of the guys we're going to talk about here in a moment could be awesome quarterbacks. I'm not sure if I get that level of upside from Fernando, but what I do get is just a really smart quarterback that, unlike a lot of these quarterbacks, he does NFL things, right? And it's really hard to explain, but going through progressions, maneuvering in the pocket, having different arm angles, extremely accurate. I do worry a little bit about that over conservativeness that he has at times. Like there are moments where I'm like, man, there's a guy running right open downfield, and instead you take the wide open check down, or you take the wide open underneath route, which is fine and which is okay. That's a better issue to have than somebody who's just a straight gunslinger and is going to make any throw, you know, all over the field. But I just looked at him and said, man, this guy has an NFL play style to him. He has an NFL game. He plays like almost a experienced veteran in college football. Like you would think Fernando was like a 6-year starter, but he's actually not. Like he's a pretty young guy. So I'm pretty high on Fernando in terms of I think he could just be a solid starting quarterback in the league. I don't think he has the upside though of some of these other quarterbacks. Let's go over to number 3. I have Arch Manning. Now here's the thing, 99% chance Arch is not in the 2026 quarterback class, but it's at least a fair moment to at least talk about him. Now of all the quarterbacks on this list, Arch Manning has the least amount of film to go off of, hence why he's at my number 3. But if we got a full season of those like 2 or 3 games that he started, he would easily be my number 1. So kind of take that into account. The biggest reason why Arch is at number 3 and not number 1 is because he's only played like 2 or 3 games. So that's kind of why he's here. With that said, there's a lot to like about Arch Manning. Number 1, and I hate to say it, he's a Manning. Like he has that Manning professionalism to him, that demeanor to him, that willing to do whatever it takes kind of mentality. He's already kind of a professional at Texas. I mean, this is a guy who could have transferred anywhere. Like, and genuinely when I say this, he could have transferred anywhere and probably been the starting quarterback for 99.9% of teams. That includes Georgia, that includes Bama, that includes, you know, a whole list of schools. But he stayed at Texas as the backup quarterback behind Quinn Ewers. And hell, let's be honest, Arch was probably a better quarterback than Quinn, so he had every right to complain, but he didn't do so. Because he is a Manning, he has the best coaches in his house. I mean, he literally gets to talk to Eli and Peyton, and his dad was a football player at one point too. Not a quarterback though, but he gets to talk to those guys. He already has the money and the trainers and, you know, everything to get to the point where he needs to be. And as we sit here today, he is the most fundamentally sound quarterback of this entire list. He's got a very snappy release. It's quick, it's fast. He plays with a good base. He has strong hips, really rotates properly, is for the most part pretty accurate. I did think in the couple of games we saw him, granted they weren't against like the greatest competition, there were moments where he kind of was like overzealous, where he was just trying to throw as many deep bombs down the field, even when sometimes they weren't open. But again, I kind of think that's maybe because he was just so stoked and so excited to get on the field and he's going up against bad competition. I shouldn't say bad, but not great competition, that he was kind of like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to throw it deep here and see what happens. But boy, is this dude is such a fun player. So for his pros, I said, number one, he's a Manning. We talked about it. Two, he is by far the most athletic Manning between Eli, Peyton, and Arch. Like, he is legitimately athletic. Not like a Manning athletic, but like legitimately athletic. And again, I think his fundamentals are just supremely sharp. Now, for his cons, he has only played like 3 games, and he's more than likely going to be in the 2027 class. And he likes to throw the deep ball, maybe at times a little too much. 2025, though, this upcoming season, he's going to be the full-time starting quarterback, so we're really going to get the full experience with Arch Manning, and that's either going to make us love him so much more and potentially have him as the number 1 pick, or it's going to be a situation where it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. Now, if Arch plays fantastic this year, I think there's a very, very, very strong chance he ends up going number 1 overall. It kind of will just matter as to what team has that pick to see if Arch actually goes into it or if he decides to stay. So we'll just have to wait and see. Let's move over to number 2, Garrett Nussmeier. Again, I want to reiterate, if Arch had a full sample size, he might be my number 1, which would have Nussmeier at number 3. But because I haven't seen the full Arch experience, he's my number 3, and now we're moving to Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier is similar to Fernando Mendoza in some ways, but I do see a level of upside with him. Now, Garrett is well-sized. He's a little bit shorter, but I think for the most part, he's pretty well built, so I'm not too worried about the height, I'm not worried about the height like I am for Cade Klubnik. He's fundamentally really sound, and his strength is perfectly there. He can be a gunslinger at times, which I kind of put as like a con and a pro, which the gunslinger mentality is great if you're good at it. But if you're inconsistent with it, you can have some really bad tape on film. And that's kind of what I saw from Garrett, where that gunslinging mentality was great on occasion, but boy, was it bad sometimes. And I do think his accuracy in occasion could be a little bit off as well. Now, his entire family, I believe, is from an athletic profile. And I know some of his parents or some of his family members are coaches. So he gets top tier coaching, just like Arch, of course, not to the same level. Arch is with the Mannings, but he also gets coaching from within the family. So you can kind of see it. Like, his fundamentals are pretty sharp. It is a little bit weird how he can be inaccurate at times. And there are times where I feel like he can lock onto a single read, but he does have those NFL snaps on film where on certain drives, he's going to really have proper dropbacks. He's going to go through progressions and reads, and he's going to make high level reads that NFL players have to do. But then there are times where it's almost like somebody's on his shoulder telling him to do something stupid, and he'll do something a little bit idiotic. So now he has a new roster around him. It might be a little bit less talented because you just lose Will Campbell and a handful of other guys. So we'll see about LSU. I'm not too tapped in with their roster, but a bit of a new roster around him. Let's see how he navigates this new team. I do think his upside is there. If he had came out in 2026, he probably would have been a top 5 pick just because he was better prospect than Shedeur Sanders. So that's my thoughts on Garrett. Moving over to number 1 is Drew Aller. There is 2 versions of Drew, an awesome Drew and a bad Drew. I think Drew Aller has gotten better every single year. I think he has great size. His arm talent is there. He's for the most part fairly athletic. He's got a cannon of an arm, like an absolute rifle. For his pros, his accuracy can dwindle at times. I thought it got better this past year, but still it was very inconsistent. His footwork can become erratic when he is pressured and when he's not feeling terribly confident, and he had some bad turnovers. The biggest flaw to Drew Aller's game is this guy just sometimes doesn't show up in the big moments. Like, it happened this year. It's happened all year last year and the year prior, where when he goes up against the Ohio States and, you know, the big time schools, these college football playoffs, he just kind of dwindles. And it's a little bit frustrating because it's like, man, you play so well for 10 of the 12 weeks we play. But for whatever reason, when we get against that Ohio State, when we get against these top tier programs, he just struggles. And it's almost like maybe he's putting too much onto his plate. I don't know what the issue is. I will say this is going to be a really great opportunity for him to kind of put it all together, because Penn State didn't lose much this year. They're running back a very similar roster, and compare that to the Ohio States of the world where, man, they have so much turnover. Aller's going to have an opportunity to legitimately put a great year of tape on film. I love his upside. If he can just perform against Ohio State and some of these other big time programs, get some big wins, I will feel so much more confident in Drew Aller. Kind of like Garrett Nussmeier, if he did come out the past year, we are generally talking about somebody that maybe could have arguably been the number 1 pick, just because last year's class wasn't particularly good. So I think there would have been a team that would have been willing to kind of take that risk of Drew Aller and just say, you know what, he's better than what we've seen so far on film against those bad teams. So give him time. I think he has the total package. He could end up being a fantastic player with his size profile, his talent, his upside. Just has to put it all together next year, and I think he has a great chance to do so. But you let me know in the comments below, which player did I not have in my top 10 that you have in your top 10, and I'll make sure to check out their film, and we'll probably update this sometime as the season progresses. But you let me know in the comments below. Love you guys. Peace.